Hello everyone, welcome to your partner in education, Agile Rank Mate. Today, in this episode of Measure with Mensa, we're going to be looking at some sample questions asked in the Mensa examination. Now, Mensa is basically a test to determine IQ, and it leads you to a certain society. So therefore, the Mensa test is designed to really use brain power as well as analytical thinking. So let's look at some questions and give you guidelines on how to solve them effectively. So let's start off with our first question. Which of the numbers should replace the question mark? We've got a 4x4 table. We've got 4 columns A, B, C, D. We need to find out the last number of column D. So, how do we solve this? Well, in most of these cases, the idea is that there would be numbers along 3 rows in a column, giving the last number. Or it would be across a row you got 3 columns, giving the number to the 4th column. So in a sense, what I'm trying to say is that some of these numbers could be this number, or some of these numbers could be this number. So that's how we find out the relation of how to find out the question mark. Now for this particular question, this is actually quite simple. If you look at the first row, you can see that the number in A plus the number in B plus the number in C gives you the number in D. 3 plus 5 is 8, plus 1 gives you 9. Now let's prove it for the other 2 rows. So in row 2 you have 2 as A, 0 as B, and 4 as C. Their total is 6, which is D. For 7108, you've got 7 plus 1 plus 0, which still gives you 8. So as you can see, our relation is sound. So what we're going to do, we're going to apply it for the last row. So in the last row, you have 2 as A, 3 as B, and 1 as C. So when we add them together, 2 plus 3 gives you 5, 5 plus 1 gives you 6. So the right answer for which of the numbers should replace the question mark turns out to be option F, which is 6. So by using the relation where the first 3 numbers added together give you the last number in that row, we can use that relation to find out that 6 is the right answer that should replace the question mark. Well, let's look at another question. Well, this one seems a bit complicated because of multiple symbols. But let's look at the question first. Each same symbol has a value. Work out the logic and discover what should replace the question mark. So as you can see, the question mark is here, and we've got 4 symbols. We've got Z's, we've got the 3 lines, we've got a trident-like thing, and we've got omega. I believe this is called a phi or something, but let's move on. The idea is to find out the value in the question mark. Now, if you see numbers along both rows and columns, you know that those are usually sums. So they are sums of all the values in the column or row. So for example, we've got Z plus Z plus omega plus Z plus Z plus trident plus omega, giving you the question mark. Similarly, you've got Z plus Z plus Z plus the 3 lines, giving you 11. So in order to find out our question mark, we need to find out the values of at least 3 of the 4 symbols. So how do we start off? Well, if you look at the second row, you can see that the symbols that are used here are all the same. It's the 3-lined symbol. Now, whatever is the sum for this particular row, you would know that it will be 4 times that particular symbol. In this case, 4 times the symbol gives you 8. Now that means the value of this symbol is equal to 8 over 4, which is equal to 2. So we can assign the value 2 to this particular symbol, the one with the 3 lines. Well, so far so good. Now what do? We need to find the value of another symbol. Well, for that we need to use another row or column. Now here we'd have one of the values as the 3 lines, and then by incorporating that and having the rest of them being another symbol, we can find out the value of the other symbol. Now, for example, when we look at the trident, when we look at column 3, we can see there are 3 tridents and 1 symbol with 3 lines. That gives us a total of 14. So basically 3 times trident plus that symbol gives you 14. Now we know the value of this symbol as 2. So it's basically 3 times trident plus 2 gives you 14, which means 3 times trident is 14 minus 2, that's 12, which means the value of the trident is 12 over 3, which is equal to 4. Now we know the value of the trident. It's 4. Now similarly, we can use the second column and the fourth column to find out our answers. In the second column, we got a similar situation. We've got 3 z's plus the symbol with 3 lines as equal to 11, which means 3z plus 2 equals 11, which means 3z equals 9, and z equals 9 over 3, which is equal to 3. So now we know the value of z as 3. Finally, if you look at the fourth column, you've got 2 omegas and 2 symbols with 3 lines. So basically 2 omega plus 2 times the symbol with 3 lines. Its total value is given as 14. So that means it's basically 2 omega plus 2 times 2, which is equal to 2 omega plus 4, which is equal to 14. So 2 omega is equal to 10, which means the value of omega is 10 over 2, which is equal to 5. So now we know the value of omega as 5. So both z's are 3, the trident is 4, omega is 5. So let's write them down. 3, 3, 4, 5. Now we need to find out the value of the question mark. It's basically the sum of the values of the terms in the row. So basically the question mark turns out to be equal to 3 plus 3 plus 4 plus 4 plus 5. 3 plus 3 gives you 6. 4 plus 5 gives you 9. 6 plus 9 gives you the number 15. So therefore, option D, 15, turns out to be the right option. So now we know that D15 is the right option for finding out whatever it is that replaces the question mark. So the idea is to identify the values of each symbol. The best way to do it is by using variables and using the rows to get out the variables. But then again, for this particular question, we had 4 of them, 4 elements of the same variable, making up one row. So it was easy to find out the value of that particular symbol, and then using that we can substitute it for the other symbols. So the idea is to use algebraic expression in 2 variables, find out the variables, and then use the values of the variables to find out our answer. Now in this particular case, we had an expression with 1 variable which gave us that value of that variable. We substituted it in the other equations to get the values of all the other symbols. So By doing that, we get 15, option D, as the answer that should replace the question mark. Now, let's look at the final question for this particular episode. We have an unusual safe. Now, the idea for this safe is that each button must be pressed only once in the correct order to open it. Now, the last button is marked F. The number of moves and the direction is marked on each button. Thus, 1U would mean 1 move up, while 1L would mean 1 move left. Now, this denomination, this notation, 1U and 1L, works when we're punching in the code. Now, we need to find out which button is the first that should be pressed. And we're going to use the grid reference, so therefore, if you see letters like C, A, and E in the options, you should know that they're basically looking at the reference. So 5D is basically the last row and the fourth element of the last row, which is 1U. So that's what 5D represents. 3C represents F itself. 1A represents 3R. 4E represents 2L, and 1B represents 4D, and 2C represents 3D here. So basically, the notations on our question figure basically show us the direction in which we should move. The question, the one in the answers, actually represents the grid reference of the number that comes first, the button that comes first. So now that makes sense, how do we solve this? Think about it. Well, it turns out we need to use the analytical method. Basically, we start from the last button, which is marked F. We move backwards until we get the first button. So, let's start the detective work. So, we know that the last button is marked F. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at each its column and the row and column in which it's present, which is column C and row 3. We're going to find out if any of these instructions would lead us to F. 2L would lead to 1A, that doesn't work. 3D would lead to the bottom element. 3U would lead to 2L. 1R would lead to this. If you look at 1D, it leads to that. 1R leads to 1D. 3L would lead to 1R. And 2L, which is basically 3E, would lead to F. So if you were to be present here, if you press 2L, that is the third, that's present in the third row and the E column, you would reach F. So after this button, you would have to press F to complete the sequence. So basically, the idea is to use this and then find out how to move along. Now, over here, we've got 1R, 1D, and 3L. Pressing all of these buttons would not lead you to 2L on row 3. If you look at the column, you can see that the first element of the column, 1E, has the direction 2D. So 2D is basically move 2 steps down. If you move 2 steps, the second button from the second button down, then you would get to 2L. So that's the third button to be pressed from the last. So we're going to do this until we get to whatever answer we have. So from 2D, if you look at the elements on the row, we got 3R, which leads to 2L, 4D leads there, 2L leads here, so it's not on the row. Now if you look at the column, 2D here would lead only downwards, 2L would lead to the row. However, 4U basically leads us to 2D. So if you were to press 4U, then you have to move 4 moves up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, which would lead to 2D, which leads to that, which leads to this. Now, if you were to now whatever the ones that we've marked are already used, so we're not going to be using them again. If we look at 2D and 2L, they would not reach for you once they are pressed because the instructions would lead somewhere else. However, if you look at the row, you can see that 4R present in the first square of that row would lead us to the last square, which is 4U. So if you were to press 4R, it goes to 4U, then 2D, then 2L, and F. So, from 4R, what's the next step? The next step would be to press 1L. So, if you were to press 1L, you would have to move to the leftmost button, which is 4R. So therefore, that turns out to be correct. Now, from 1L, if you were to use 1R and 1U, it wouldn't matter because you using them would not lead you to this 1L. However, using 4D at the top of column B would lead us to 1L. So that definitely works. So then, if you look at 3R, 1D, and 1L, those would not lead us to 4D at the top of column B. However, if you look row-wise, you can see that the button 1D, which gives us the direction 2L, would work. Because from here you go there, then down, then on that sequence. Now from 2L, we can immediately see that A1, which is 3R, turns out to be the next possible button. You use the buttons down, it would not lead you there. However, A1 would lead you there directly. Now 3R is once again taken out by 2L. So the previous button would be 2L, which is in column C. Now, if you look at the first element of column C, you can see that row-wise all the buttons are already punched. So the only way to move forward is by any buttons at the column. And luckily you've got 3U. 3U, if you move 3 steps up, you get to 2L, which leads on to the rest of the sequence. Now, how do we move on from here? Well, from 3U, if you look at it column-wise, you have 3D and 1R, which do not help. However, row-wise, you can see that this 2L, which is present in the 4th row and the column E, helps. Now from here, the only logical route is 2D because the ones on the row only go up or left, which would not work. So sorry about that. Let's mark 2D. You know what? Maybe it's because we're doing points, so let's start using a line. Let's underline whatever we've done. So now we've reached 2L, and then the next possible step is to complete column E by pressing 2D. Now from here, if you move along the column, there's no other button to press. However, along the row, you've got 3R. So we're going to press that. And then from there, it's 2L logically, because in the column, there is nothing. So 2L is next. And this 2L can be preceded by another 3R, which this time is present in column A, but it's the second element. Now from 3R, on the same column, you've got 2U. If you were to press that 2U, you would reach 3R. So from here, the next possible step is to go for 1L, because it's right next to the left. It's right to the left of that particular button. Then you've got 1D on top of it. If you were to press that, it would redirect you to that 1L. You've got a 1R here, so that helps you out. So that's the next possible step. And this 1R can be reached by pressing the 3L on column D. And over here we can use 1U, which is directly below that. There's another 1U directly below it, which would complete column D. The only column that's left is column C, so there is a 1R which is present to the 1U that we've just marked. And finally, 3 down would give us the 1R. So therefore, the first ever button that you need to press turns out to be the one which has the directions 3 down. Now, this particular button has its grid coordinates as 2C. So if you look at our options, you can see that option F turns out to be the right answer. So there is no other way of doing this. You would literally need to use elbow grease to start from the last button and then check along the rows and columns for any particular logical step before it. And then using that, we move on to the previous step, and then the previous and the previous, until we get the first button. And the first button's grid reference is what is contained in option F. So therefore, option F turns out to be the right answer for this question. The right button that we should press is the button that is in row 2 and column C. So that concludes this episode of Mensa. We hope you found this episode interesting. For more of our useful and interesting content, don't forget to subscribe to Agile Rank Mate, your partner in education. If you want to get the latest updates from our channel, then please don't forget to hit the bell icon present below the video. So until the next webisode, take care, stay alert, bye-bye for now.